This is a tutorial for DEX Science Set 4.3.
Hello and welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to be doing a very exciting activity from the Science Set 4.3. This activity involves building our own battery. We are going to use materials from the compartment B4.4.2.1. So let's take the materials that are over there and let's build our own battery. Now, in order to build our own battery, we need some very simple things. These are all the parts that we are going to need in order to build our battery. In order to build our battery, we are going to need these simple parts. First, we have some zinc-coated metal. We also have some copper wire. And then we have these plastic parts that we're going to use to build a structure for our battery. As we move along, we are going to be learning how the battery works whilst we put all the materials together. One other thing we are going to need in order to complete our battery, which may come as a surprise to some people, is some banku. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with banku, banku is a staple food here in Ghana. It's made using fermented corn dough, and sometimes some cassava dough as well is added. It's a favorite food for a lot of people, and today we are going to use it to build our battery. So now that we have all of these items available, let's start building. So we're going to start off with our zinc-coated metal and copper wire. Okay. So for your copper wire, you find that there's some insulation around it like this. And there's a cut along the insulation. And so when you inspect it, you find it, and then you can simply open it this way to reveal the copper wires in there, and then you can pull it along to free the insulation, so you will end up with some copper wires like this. So why do we need the zinc and the copper? For any cell to be able to produce electricity, you need a cathode and an anode. Usually the cathode and the anode can be two different kinds of metals. One of the metals will give electrons, and then the other metal will consume the electrons. In our case, the zinc is going to be our anode, which will produce electrons, and then the copper is going to be our cathode, which will consume the electrons. And then these electrons will make their way through an external circuit to be able to power our LED or any load that we can attach to it. We're going to come back to the metals again very soon, but for now, let's build a structure for our battery. To build a structure for our battery, you're going to need these plastic parts here. They're very simple to put together. This is going to be your base. Now this base plate is going to be what all your other parts will sit on top of, okay? So you have your base plate, and then you have different plastic pieces to divide the base plate so that we can have several cells. So all of these plastic pieces are going to help us divide this base into different cells, okay? The plastic piece to note is the one that has these two holes in there. Always that plastic piece is going to begin from here. It's always going to begin from this side of the base. So as you can see, we have a cutout here, and so that is where this is going to sit. And so you gently place that in there like this. Okay. Make sure it sits nice and tight, and there are no gaps between. Okay, So you have something that looks like this. Now we're going to place the other dividers along it as well. So this one also comes here. The spaces looking like this, okay? And so this has divided our base plate into different compartments. Now we're going to take this other piece to divide it further. Now we have 1, 2, and 3 different compartments. By using this piece, we can divide those compartments further into 6 separate compartments, okay? So as you can see, there's a cutout in here. And so that's where I'm going to put this part. So you end up with something that looks like this. As you can see, we have 6 different compartments. Now each compartment is going to represent a complete cell. Okay, so we're going to have 6 different cells, and each cell will have copper and zinc. Each cell will have copper and zinc. Okay, and so what we're going to do after we've created each of those cells, we're going to connect each of the cells together in a series connection so that we can add their voltages together to be able to get a high enough voltage to turn on a bulb. Okay? And so how are we going to do that series connection? For each cell, if we have zinc here and then copper here, the copper from this cell is going to go and connect to the zinc of the next cell. And then over here, the same thing will happen. The copper from this cell will connect to the zinc of the next cell. Thus, connecting the negative end of one cell to the positive end of the other, and then keep going until all of the different cells are connected in series. Okay, so that's what is going to happen here. So let's combine the zinc and the copper metals in such a way that we can easily build this series connection. How are you going to combine copper from one cell to zinc from another cell? It's very simple. You take one of the zinc coated metals and you take the copper wire and you put them together about a quarter way, okay, of the copper wire. And then what you're going to do next, you're going to simply wind 1, 2, 3, okay, so that you end up with something that looks like this. So when you are done with that, then you will make sure you wind this side so that it's completely gone. And then once that is done, you're going to bend this end this way. So you end up with something that looks like this. So each of your connections will look like this. So we're going to make enough connections of this nature. So if we have this copper going through this hole here into this cell. So if we have this copper going through this hole here into this cell. Now we have copper there. We need zinc in that cell. And so when we take the connector that we've made, we can place the connector in here like this, so that now this cell has copper and then zinc. And then there's already copper connected to that zinc going to the next cell. And so the next cell will also then have zinc, and then that zinc will also have copper connected to it to the next cell. And we keep doing that. So we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to need 5 of these connectors to be able to connect our entire setup. Okay, so we're going to make 5 of these connectors. So let's go ahead and then make them. So now we have 5 of our connectors ready to go. In order to build our battery, you're going to need to learn one more thing. We will need to fill each of the compartments that represent the cells with what we call an electrolyte. Now, what is the electrolyte? The electrolyte is a medium that will allow charged particles to freely flow from one of the metals, that's the anode, to the other metal, that's the cathode. Okay? And so, because the charged particles cannot move through air from one metal to the other, you need a medium that will allow the free flow of these charged particles, so that you have a complete cycle with charged particles flowing through. So the electrolyte has to obviously be a good conductor of these charged particles. And today, we are going to use a very special electrolyte. We're going to use Banku as our electrolyte. Now, in order to make the Banku work even better, it's a good idea to mix it with some salt. This will make it more electrolytic, as we say, allowing for easier flow of the charged particles. Because we're going to add some extra salt to this Banku before we put it into our compartments to serve as our electrolyte. Okay? So let's move this away for now, and then let's prepare our electrolyte. So let's go ahead and build our electrolyte. We're going to need a bit of salt to help us make the Banku more electrolytic, and then we're going to need a bowl to mix it all together. Okay, so let's go. So we're going to take some of the Banku. Okay, that's enough. Then we're going to add some salt. Okay, now we're going to mix it together. Now this can be messy, so make sure you have some towels or some tissue on hand to wipe your hands after. Our Banku and salt is thoroughly mixed, and so let me just wipe my hands clean, and then we can move on to the next step. Now that our Banku and salt is mixed, I'm going to take the salt away, and then we are going to bring our battery case. Okay, so now we're going to be taking our mixture of Banku and salt and fill each compartment with just enough to fill up the entire compartment. Okay, so we're going to take our mixture of Banku and salt and place it in each of the compartments. We're going to put just about enough to fill the entire compartment. Something very, very important to note here: make sure you've cleaned your hands before you do this activity, and make sure as you put your electrolyte into the cells, you don't have electrolyte moving from one cell to the other. Each cell should be completely independent, and the only thing connecting one cell to the other should be the copper that is jumping from one cell to the other. But you shouldn't have any of the electrolyte moving from one cell to the other. Okay, so let's go ahead and then fill our compartments with our electrolyte. It helps to roll it, okay, into a nice piece, and make sure you always have some tissue on hand to wipe your hands. Gently place the electrolyte into the compartment, making sure there's no Banku jumping from one compartment to the other. Okay. Okay, then you wipe your hands, it's very important. to remove as much of the banku from your hand as possible. And then we go and take some more banku. Note that it's always a better idea to have not enough banku for the compartment than to have too much and then get spills from one compartment to the other. Okay, so if you put it there and it's not enough, you can easily add up to it. But if you make it too much, then it's possible that it will spill off into another compartment. Once you have every compartment filled up, it's important that you wipe any excess banku. If there's any banku that is moving from one cell to the other, you can make sure you move it out of the way using this piece of plastic so that everything is nice and clean. And then make sure you wash your hands. Don't just wipe your hands, wash your hands before you move on to the next step. So we're going to start placing our copper and zinc into the individual cells. Okay, so we're going to start off from this hole here, which leads into this first cell. We're going to put some copper there. Okay, now before you put the copper there, let's just try and then just bend it a little bit. Okay, let's bend it a little bit so that we have we're going to place it through. We're going to place it through this hole into the first cell. Okay, and so we have our copper going through the hole into the first cell here. Okay, so now that this first cell has some copper, we need to add what? Zinc to it. So we're going to get some zinc. Now as we place it, make sure that the zinc doesn't go and touch the copper that you've placed into that cell. Okay, we're just going to gently push that through. Make sure it's touching the banku. So now this cell has copper and zinc. Okay, this cell here has copper and zinc. Okay, the copper goes through this hole into the banku, and we have the zinc here. And then note that because of how we constructed the connectors, we have the copper from the next one already connecting to the zinc here. Okay, so that is like connecting the positive end of one cell to the negative end of the other. Okay, so we're going to go on like that. So for the next cell here, we already have the copper in here, so we need what? Zinc in there. Okay, let's go ahead and connect that. So now we are at the end, and so we have this hole here, and so this cell here has copper already, so we need some zinc, and the zinc will come through this hole. So we get some zinc and then we push it through this hole, making sure it does not touch the copper in there. And so when you are done, you should have something that looks like this, with each cell having copper and zinc, and then a series connection between all the 6 cells. Great. So now your battery is looking beautiful. Everything is set up. If you happen to have a multimeter or a voltmeter on hand, this would be a good time to try and measure how much voltage your battery is producing. Now, if you happen to have any device on hand that can help you measure voltage, this would be a good time to measure the voltage your battery is producing. If you have a multimeter, make sure it's configured to measure voltage. And if you have a voltmeter, you can go ahead and measure directly. I have a multimeter configured to measure voltage. So I'm going to touch the black to my negative and then the red to positive. And as you can see, we are measuring 4.5 volts. A battery that we made using banku, some copper wire, and some zinc coated metal is giving us 4.5 volts. Science is indeed all around us. Great. But if you don't have a multimeter or voltmeter on hand, that is also fine, because inside your science set 4.3, some wires and some LEDs. And so you can take one LED from here, using the LED, we can test to see that our battery is indeed producing some electricity. We're going to connect our male wires to the LED. Okay, and then we're going to connect them to our battery. Now don't forget that there's a light emitting diode, and so you're looking at the symbol. You have to connect this part to the positive side of the battery and then this part to the negative side of the battery. Okay, so let's go ahead and connect it. Let's see what happens. Do you see that? Do you see it? The battery that we've made using banku, some copper wire, and zinc coated metal is producing enough electricity to light up a bulb. Isn't this wonderful? Imagine all the things you can do if you apply the things that you are learning in school, using simple scientific concepts, including conductors and non-conductors, metals and non-metals, simple electrical circuits, charged particles. We've been able to create our own battery using banku that we eat every day. This goes to show you that the simple concepts that you're learning in school can be applied to build amazing technologies. What are you going to do next? You can try different kinds of substances. You can try rice, you can try banana. See how many different things that you can use as your electrolyte. Are there also other metals you can use as your anode and cathode? Find all of these out. Explore more. And I really hope that this makes you learn more science. What we can do is take these final pieces to hold everything nicely in place. The role of this is to help hold everything in place so that you can easily carry your dry cell everywhere you go. So there you have it. This has been another exciting activity using the DEX Science Set 4.3. See you in the next video.